Good evening. Welcome to Morning Star. I'm Larry Burr of the Morning Star Church and the Oak Initiative. I welcome you to the church, and I want you to enjoy this evening, especially this forum. This is a big night for the children of Fort Mill. It is time to ensure their education opportunities get better and better and better. I want to honor the parents and grandparents. I also want to honor all the teachers and education workers that are present. I also honor the school board candidates. Together, we will make a difference. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, in the name of Jesus, we pray. We just thank you, Lord, for freedom. We thank you for the exchange of ideas. We ask for unity of this community. We ask you, Lord, to get away from petty differences and pay attention to our children and their education and their opportunities to compete worldwide, internationally, in jobs, in corporations, in industry. And we just thank you, Lord, for this opportunity. We pray for an open communication, transparent transparent answers, also good questions, and also evaluation of candidates that you will vote for tonight. And thank you, Lord, for tonight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Lord. Let's rock and roll. Here he comes.
Now that's a good introduction. I've never had anyone call me rock and roll. Let's go. I like that one. I'm going to have to make that part of my rider. Well, good evening to everyone here. Thank you so much for turning out. Look at this. This is a good-looking group of people. These folks are passionate about education in the community. Thank you so much for running. So thank you so much. We are going to be respectful of your time, of their time. It is a school night. I know we've got school tomorrow, so we'll go ahead and get underway. I'm Lucas McFadden. I am the anchor and producer for CN2 News, as well as co-host of WRHI's Palmetto Mornings on FM 100.1. I just want to kind of lay out the evening real quick. The candidates are seated right here on stage at tables in alphabetical order according to their ballot order. There are a list of event sponsors, and we definitely want to appreciate and thank them. Moms for Liberty of York County, the Oak Initiative, Republican Women Rising, Freedom Primary Care, Dennis Getter, Celanese Chiropractic Health and Performance, and Fierce Mom Workshop. So thank you so much for those sponsors for helping put together tonight's event. All right, so there are going to be a total of 5 questions. Each candidate will get 2 minutes to respond to each question. We have provided them with 4 questions in advance. The last and 5th question is right here, sealed. I have glanced at it only to make sure I understood the question, but I resealed it back. So we'll be ready to rock and roll when that time comes around. This question will be the same for all the candidates. As the candidates respond to the questions, our timekeeper right here in front will alert the candidates to the time remaining with signs of 30-second orange, 15 seconds yellow, and the stop sign red when they are out of time. Now, in a perfect world, we don't always speak in sound bites, so if the red sign comes up, just finish your thought, period. But if you start another sentence, we'll have to jump in and kind of stop. But you all are professionals. I don't think I have to worry about that. As many of you hopefully had a chance to speak to these candidates ahead of time, great. If not, I know a lot of these candidates will be sticking around afterwards if you've got follow-up questions. And in the age of technology that we live in, amen to this, that little QR code that's behind the candidates there, if you want to scan that at some point today, it will pull up bios for all of these candidates right here. So we are not going to do a traditional introduction and closing statements. We'll go ahead and get right into the first question. So candidates, when I read the question, your time will begin once you start talking, okay? So if you want to gather your thoughts for a quick second, that's when the time will begin. So if everyone is ready, we will go ahead with the first question. And of course, we'll go in alphabetical order. Wayne, you'll get to the first one, okay? We'll do the same thing. You should have your microphones up there that you'll share, and there should be microphones down there that everyone's going to share. And then Rachel, the one in front of you, I think your side of the table will share, and I think that is, I think you'll just pass it. Again, that will not be part of the time. Okay. All right, so question number one, Wayne, we will start with you. An individual school board member has no authority. Only the board as a whole can make decisions for the district. What skills or traits will allow you to contribute to effective operations of the board as a whole?
Thank you, Lucas. I believe in the value of relationships. The basis for developing a positive relationship is based on communications and building trust. Building trust takes time, attention, and intentional effort. Hard to gain, very easy to lose. I lead teams of employees daily, as well as teams of volunteers. The latter being the harder to do because they have less incentive to do what you want them to do. My success as a leader has been based on those principles of relationships, communications, and trust. It also requires being knowledgeable and admitting when you make a mistake. These are the tools I employ to gain consensus in group settings, like on the school board. That concludes my comment.
Thank you very much. Same question to Michelle.
Thanks, Lucas. So, as you know, I'm an incumbent on the Fort Mill School Board. Doing this job for 8 years now has enabled me to build relationships with my co-board trustees. It has allowed me to build relationships with the public. As a business owner and also as a realtor, I spend most all of my days negotiating with people that want something or don't want to do something, and you have to tread a fine line, and you have to be able to say yes and no. And I have learned that art very delicately and very diligently. To Wayne's point about volunteers, I have been a volunteer in this community since the day I moved here, which was more than 15 years ago. I continue to volunteer in this community. I continue to do not just a school board trustee job, not just a paid job as a realtor, but also as a volunteer in my community, whether it's through Rotary, giving service above self, or whether it's through many other avenues, including in being involved in our schools as judges or as a mentor or whatever the case happens to be. So having that ability to reach and touch across different lines makes a really strong school board candidate, which also then makes them able to work with their peers to be able to get the job done.
Connie Cullen.
Hi, my name is Connie Cullen, and I'm a mother of 2 children here in the Fort Mill School District. And as a mother, we all know that you have to learn to negotiate. And as a parent of this district, I planned to be accountable and take ownership to represent the children and the parents and the teachers of this district. Now, I grew up in the Carolinas with good Southern values of respect, integrity, and hard work. And those are qualities that really are needed in any aspects of our lives, and it will be no different than on the board. First, you have to be able to respect the people that you work with, but more than anything, you have to have integrity and be willing to bring the hard work. And those are all tasks that I show every day in my life. I hold many different real estate licenses in 3 different states, so hard work is not a problem. I actually love it and enjoy having to work with other people who don't always agree with me. Thank you.
Kevin?
Hi. So, I think the key to having the board as a whole go along with your decision making is persuasion, and it's relationships and it's trust, as the others said. And it's showing that you're persuadable and having an open mind, not being the predictable person, and so your colleagues know that they can persuade you. It builds trust both ways, and you can persuade them. And it's negotiation. My background, I have over 20 years experience with a multinational corporation. I work with engineering teams to get things built and done across different countries like France and Mexico and Brazil, and I've actually been in sales for most of the second half of that career, where I sold various equipment and contracts to customers all over the world, places like India and South Korea and Australia and Europe and all over North America. So it's about being able to disagree without being disagreeable, and about being willing to negotiate and persuade to come to a common view.
Joe? Hey, everybody. Hey. Y'all, this is awesome. This is just absolutely amazing. I just want to first say thank you to everybody who you don't get to see their faces up here, but they were so engaged at putting this entire thing together. And so I want to also thank you just for coming out. This is amazing. This turnout is amazing. And what it shows is there's just such a high level of interest in this election. So that's just really, really awesome to see. So just a little bit about me to kind of actually answer this question. My name is Joe Helms, and I am one of these people running for the Fort Mill School Board. And, it was really a sense that I got from the Lord a period of time ago to be a strong voice for our kids and for our parents in the district. Right now, I just don't feel like they're too heard. They can be got a little bit too ignored a little bit often. But two ways that I really can ensure that this district stays strong, and I'm talking goes to a next level of greatness, is to really emphasize my ability to unify. You can take any type of person, and if you can grab what they excel in, and you can highlight that, you really can move forward. This thing's called a board. Well, I call it more like a body. It's a body of people, and a body has to move together to find progress. So that's just one way. Another way, y'all, is my background is in financial education. I show people how to spend money wisely. And I saved them a lot of money. That is what this district needs. It needs vision-driven leadership, and it needs fiscal responsibility to go to the next level. So thank you so much. God bless. I'm excited about this evening. It's going to be awesome, y'all. All right. Desiretta?
Thank you. So it's just totally unfair that I have to come behind that. just going to put that right out. Okay, so again, I'm Desiretta, and just to get straight to the question, what skills or traits will allow me to contribute to effective operations of the board as a whole? First of all, I want to say that this board and prior boards, because the board has changed a couple of times, I think I voted for everybody, all of the incumbents at one time or another. They have done an exceptional job. The road to academic excellence has absolutely been paved. It has absolutely been paved. As a business owner, I have worked with family and children for the past 15 years. I'm actually a stakeholder. My business isn't here in South Carolina, but is here. It is in North Carolina. So I'm actually a stakeholder. So I bring that perspective to the board. As a mental health professional, we have many people on the board with different skill sets, with different backgrounds, but I'm not aware of anyone that is a mental health professional on the board. So I bring a needed perspective to the board, a relevant perspective. Also, I'm a critical thinker. I'm very, very solution driven. As a stakeholder and as a business owner, I collaborate with others well. I am an effective communicator. But most importantly, this is real popular right now, but I'm a Christian and I stand on my strong biblical beliefs. Every decision I make is derived from biblical principles that I believe in.
Rachel? Do a mic check for us just to make sure?
Check.
Okay. Okay, all right, we're good. You can go ahead and begin, Rachel.
Okay. Thank you for having me. Sorry about that. Just want to wake everybody up. So again, my name is Rachel, and I'm so proud to be here, and thank all of you for being here also. It's really important to me to see all of you because we are the ones to make the difference together. So a little bit of background about me. I joined the military and took advantage of the GI Bill to pave my way for my education. I currently work in human resources, and that background helps with this board because we can bring together effective policies to make a change within this district. I believe all these people are running. COVID has opened my eyes to so many shortcomings. So I was just here to bring awareness, and I feel that every child deserves an education free from indoctrination. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Eric?
Testing. All right. Just didn't sound right. That's fine. Hey, I'm Eric, man. Nice to meet you all. I'll jump straight into it. The skills and traits that I possess. I'll say the main important one, I'm a parent with a child that's a student in the school district currently. I've always been involved in the schools. I always I always volunteered, always sat in for teachers' lunches, always went on school field trips. So I'll say the skills and traits, definitely loving, caring, protected. But also I played basketball. I guess many probably seen that I'm fairly tall. But I played basketball, so being a teammate, a team player, also being a leader, being a captain at BMI, has taught me that on this board you can never do anything alone. You need the board as a whole to accomplish anything. And so my slogan to start off was, together we excel, because it incorporates the parents, the teachers, the students, all coming together, gelling together to make sure that we have a great financial institute. But more importantly, I have experience in safety and insurance. I've worked with school districts in the past. I've worked with several colleges in the past to ensure our safety and protection of our students and our teachers, that they arrive home safe and sound. And so those are the skills and traits that I possess. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna swap out the mic.
Hold on 1 second. We're going to do a quick mic change. Technology is everyone's best friend when it's working and everyone's worst enemy when it's not. Yeah, that's it. Okay. All right. All right. We'll continue again with question number 1. Celia.
Hi, my name is Celia McCarter. Completing my first term as a school board trustee, I have demonstrated that I can effectively collaborate and contribute with my fellow board members as well as to the district. I understand the role of a board and how it's clearly defined in our policy about what we can and cannot do. School finance is a significant portion of our jobs as board trustees, and it's incredibly complicated. My experience and training as an actuary made this piece of my duties both interesting and fun. I've spent numerous hours working with our CFO, Leanne Nordo, and taking deep dives into our $197 million budget, which has been very helpful. I'm self-motivated. I have an eagerness to learn. During my 4 years, I've completed over 200 hours of boardsmanship training so that I can understand the laws and regulations that govern public service and public school district, as well as our role as school board members as defined by the South Carolina law. As a small business owner for 15 years, where I serve the public, I have experience in making difficult decisions and the willingness to set higher goals. I am able to make large picture decisions, yet I'm happy to roll up my sleeves and serve and to look for new ways to improve effectiveness and policy changes. I've served in leadership roles throughout the district for too many committees that I couldn't even take the time to name, but they did include the Fort Mill business community, successful bonds to build the brand new schools that you see here in the school district, student health advisory councils, process and performance management, fundraising, as well as our school improvement councils, and serving with students in needs. I'm a tireless and strong advocate for the Fort Mill School District and K-12 education.
Thank you. And Libby.
And I have a teacher voice, so I could just put this down and it would be fine. So this is what teachers do every day, every year. We build a community. We bring in 20-something people who some of them know each other, some of them were enemies before on the playground, and we turn them into a family where they work together towards a common goal. And it looks like it happens just magically, but it happens because the teachers make it happen. This is what I did for almost 30 years. I know how to work with people and find different perspectives and honor and respect the different points of view that come to the table. I had to push myself out of my comfort zone of little children who honored me because of my position into convincing people like state legislators and other district teachers of the year and parents that I could listen, I could understand, and we could share ideas and find a common solution. The hardest part was those family parent conferences where sometimes the parents were separated, sometimes divorced, sometimes there was a new daddy, a new mommy as part of the picture, and I was able to help them remember what our goal was. Not all that stuff that happened outside the classroom, but the stuff that we needed to do together for those kids to be successful. And I feel like if teachers can do that with little bitty kids, we can do that with grown-ups.
Thank you very much. So that ends question one. With the next question, we'll start backwards. So Libby, you'll get the first one. We'll make our way down the line here. And just be mindful of everyone's cell phones. If we can silence those cell phones, those are tricky little things, I know, but if we can silence them and give our candidates time to focus on their questions, that would be fantastic. All right, question two, same rules apply. Once I read the question, gather your thoughts, and then the timekeeper will begin the time once you start. If elected, how will you hold the superintendent accountable for not meeting the projected academic performance agreed upon in the strategic plan?
I have been a part of Fort Mill Schools for almost ever, it feels like. I have been around since there were only 4 schools, and 2 of those were our elementary schools. And I've had the opportunity, the challenge to work with many superintendents over that time. And I can tell you that the best superintendents I worked for were the ones who made the teachers feel like they were an integral part of the success of the school district. And the current superintendent we have is always deferring to the secret sauce of the teachers in our district. He's always reminding people that we are what make the difference for our kids. And I think that if you look at our newest results that were shared at the board meeting on Tuesday night, we're kind of killing it. Our scores were the top in the state, except one district beat us in one subject, 4th grade math, and I don't blame that on the superintendent or the teachers. I blame that on equivalent fractions because I've taught it, and it's hard and challenging the first year you do it. I think it's important to remember that the superintendent doesn't run the district. He has a leadership team, and all of them encourage us to reach for really high goals. But when you're really good to start with, it's hard to get better. Just ask Tom Brady. I think that we just need to keep our teachers reminded that they're valued, that they're important to the process, and our achievement will continue to be high, and we'll be sitting pretty for a long time to come.
Thank you.
Since 2017, I have served on strategic planning committees. It's a committee as a member, as a community member, as a parent, and a board trustee. The strategic plan is a set of stretch goals based over 5 years. So when we have this plan in place, we're expecting to reach 20% of that plan every year to achieve the 100%. Since 2005, I've served on school improvement councils that look at these plans, analyze where the gaps are, and focus on that problem immediately to close those gaps. As a school board trustee, I know the superintendent's performance is based on more than just the strategic plan. It's based on accountability factors like the school report card, safety and security, evaluations, and closing those achievement gaps. The better question is to ask, how do we identify or solve the problems if we're not meeting those goals? So as a board trustee, I voted to approve for funding for additional teachers in the classroom to reduce class sizes. I voted to approve additional teachers for math and reading specialists as well as district support positions. We have implemented the multi-tier student services process that identifies the academic achievement gaps down to an individual student at an individual level. And we can focus on that component. We also have professional learning communities that prepares teachers for assessments with the students. And when the students don't meet, when those teachers are best at teaching that, we pair them with the students who didn't learn that at the first time that he had heard it. So this process is repeated with every assessment given. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so this is much better this time.
Yeah.
Thank you. So as a board member, one of the responsibilities of the board member is definitely ensuring academic success, ensuring that there's performance measures put in place. But I will work with other board members to ensure that we're proactive, that we're setting annual performance goals at the beginning of the year to ensure that we're meeting those performance every year. Because you think about it, the performance that we hold the superintendent to has a direct reflection into the school system, direct reflection into the community as a whole. So you do that by performance management. You do that by setting talk points and touch points throughout the year to see whether or not we are achieving those goals and whether or not we're hitting those goals. And when you have performance management in place, you have opportunities to correct it if there's any development opportunities, and if those development opportunities are there, then you work on a different plan to ensure that we hit those opportunities, hit those target goals, because, like I said, it really reflects on the community as a whole. It reflects on our students. It reflects on everyone. What we set forward, the superintendent goes, he works with the principals work with the teachers, it goes all the way down to our kids. And so setting those plans in place, being proactive, also having those measurable goals, and having those goals that you go back and you look at and ensure that we're hitting those goals is key. You can't really perform if you don't have a goal set and you're not measuring those goals, but they have to be measurable goals. And that's what you do to ensure that we hold the superintendent accountable. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the question. As they said before, one of the job duties of the board member is to hold the superintendent accountable and execute clearly defined goals and the expectations according to the strategic plan and policy. So this all ties into my HR background, from implementing PIPs, performance improvement plans, and making sure goals are attainable and achievable. Quarterly reviews, not just checklists. The superintendent is no different. The current strategic plan has many goals, but fails to even mention children with special needs, disabilities, or even children on IEP. So I feel like that's an issue that needs to change. So we need to focus on the contract as a living, breathing document rather than by amendments every 10 years. Thank you.
bombshell this time. Guys, you guys are probably I'm probably gonna bore some of you because I am gonna try really hard to stick to the question. The question specifically asks, how will I hold the superintendent accountable? So I need to put some things into perspective. And I studied to show myself approved. So in my studying, I think I understand that board members produce policies, which are, and then the superintendent is tasked with implementing these policies, and that's how the school district is ran. I went out there and looked for the strategic plan. I saw the strategic plan, 41-page document. I read all of it, and nowhere in the strategic plan did I specifically see outlined what the superintendent's responsibilities for the plan was. So, Mr. Epps, or Dr. Epps, was assigned as our superintendent in 2009 by Michael Johnson. And clearly he's done some things right because we're a district in the state. People move here for the school district. So as far as holding him accountable, I can't honestly say how I would hold him accountable because for good reason, his contract, I looked to see if the contract was out there anywhere, I couldn't find it. And that's for good reason, for his privacy and for, to maintain the integrity of the district. But without looking at what is actually in his contract, I'm not willing to assume anything. I want to know what is in his contract, and then if performance is in his contract, then we can look at maintaining open communication and putting action plans in place if things aren't going the way they should go.
Yeah, okay, so as far as holding the superintendent accountable, I think something that a lot of people struggle with is really understanding the role of the school board. And while that conversation is for a different time, one of those things is the school board employs one person, and that is the superintendent. When you have an employee, you set that employee up with a proper set of goals and a level of expectation, and that also comes with reviews. We all know that because we've all had them and experienced those in our positions. So when those reviews are had, if you constantly have bad reviews, you can expect some pretty bad results. Well, what I would like to see is a more quantitative perspective on individual groups that really aren't being documented right now. We have IEP, 504 plans. What about our district has exploded? It has absolutely exploded. It's over doubled in 9 years? I mean, that's insane. So if you look at the level of the students who are coming in here, that English is their second language, how are we measuring that? What metrics do we have in place? Do we have a metric for that? And so, Chuck Epps will not be the superintendent forever. I believe he has 3 years left on his contract. And so whoever steps into this position following, we really need to be able to have those meetings. And I'm on the team of have quarterly meetings. And you know what? And you might be on we'll have him on the bus or we'll have her on the bus. But we may need to put her in a different seat or him in a different seat to get a new perspective. We're a growing district, but we're a winning district, and believe me, we are about to be a hugely winning district. Elect this guy.
Pay for performance. I mean, it's just like it works in any other business, and it's really the whole point of the school board. The community elects us to represent their priorities and their values in the schools, and we in turn hire the superintendent. He's our employee. We can't run the schools ourselves, so we hire qualified people to do that, and that's the superintendent, and we're his boss. You're our boss. You hold us accountable through the election process. We are the superintendent's boss. So we set the goals, we set the priorities, we make sure they're measurable, and specific, and we review them quarterly. I've heard quarterly. I think quarterly is great, and I think we tie the compensation directly to the achievement of the goals that we set. It's not, hey, you better shape up. It's, you didn't make your target this quarter, you're not getting as much compensation this quarter. That's accountability. That's the kind of accountability that every business in America uses, and it shouldn't be any different here.
So, what has already been mentioned, the school board has one employee, and that employee is our superintendent. Now, everyone assumes that if you're a business owner or run a business, or you're a member of a leadership, or you actually have a college degree, that you have the innate ability to do performance reviews. Well, that's not always true, because people think accountability means blame. It doesn't. Accountability means you are responsible for the agreed performance that we have laid out for you. That's your job, and you're accountable for it. But as a board, we have ownership. Our job is to make sure that our superintendent is accountable. Our job is to, and I'm a big fan, and I'm actually to having quarterly reviews. How can we review a guy once a year and then give him a 6% raise? That's not a review. All of you who've worked understand that a quarterly review allows you to know where you're meeting your goal. And our superintendent has to give performance reviews to our teachers, our administrators. Well, we have to be accountable and take ownership, because if we are not giving him guidance, how is he giving them guidance? And our IEPs and 504s in this district has blown up. It should be on our strategic plan. The fact that it isn't, it just astounds me, because our numbers are too high to not include these children in that strategic plan. Thank you.
So you've heard a lot of different things so far tonight pertaining to this question of accountability. While I don't disagree that in a normal business world, a quarterly review, a bonus or otherwise is appropriate when performance is there. The problem with that becomes this. There's step pays, there are pay scales that are set in place by the state, by your legislators, and it's our job and our role to follow those that are already set in place. It's not something that we can incentivize with a bonus or otherwise in a traditional sense. So that's one component to that. I would also question how we would be able to incentivize, or how we would judge this when we are trying to lessen the amount of testing and testing results on our children in our classrooms. That's been a big push, not only by our legislators. Federally, we've had that discussion. Locally, we have that discussion. The only way you can measure is to track, which is to test. And I don't think anybody is sitting here saying that we want to test more, but I'm also not hearing anybody say we want to test less. So I think that there's a real fine balance. When it gets to the bottom line, here's the reality. We're the #1 school district in the state of South Carolina. And anybody can say, woo, whoop-de-doo, it's South Carolina. We are also in the top 5 to 10% in the nation. That's nationwide. That's not South Carolina, that's nationwide. It's a long way to get to the next level when you've got such a small amount that you can improve upon because you're already at the top.
I'm really wondering if it's better to be at the front end or the question. That's why, what else do I say? Well, say in a job, in normal industry, anything most of us have experienced, yes, if you don't meet your goals, what happens is you develop a corrective action plan, a roadmap for how do you correct that, how do you get better, all right? You don't necessarily take immediate action, you just work to try to get your goals lined up and create a way to get there. You want your employees to be successful. There are many different measures of student academic success. And it's kind of like accounting principles. I mean, you can make numbers look the way you want them to look, and a given number on a P&L, you really need to look down in deep into it. You need to get the context of it. What else was going on? What was impacting this? And what does this really mean? And then also look at the trends. How's it been going from year to year? We're there back to what else impacted it. The environmental concerns, the economy changed, or this and that or the other. Anyhow, so you need to look at those sort of things. We monitor our performance annually, and we look at the various different standardized tests that we have to the kids take, as well as like our SATs and ACTs, which are optional but required if you're going to college. Recently reported performance measures show our district continues to be number one in South Carolina and actually top 2% in the nation. That says a lot. What that tells me, well, one more thing. Our COVID slide. We have done a lot of work to get them back up to par. The ELA has exceeded. Math hasn't quite caught up. It is like a very good trend toward getting caught up. But it shows me that we have leadership in place because he's picked the right leaders to get us there.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll begin the third question. Wayne, we'll start with you and work our way down. Question number 3. Parents found examples of culturally responsive teaching, pornographic literature, and gender identity surveys in schools that deviate from the state standards like reading, writing, math, and science. If elected, what will you do to stop and remove this from the schools, and what consequences will there be for future incidents?
Okay. Number one, I think all of us in this room at least have pretty similar values, but we all have different values. They all differ in some one way or another. But we have a general idea based on our raising, what's right, what's wrong. That does not always coincide with the way the law is written and the way the courts uphold set precedents for things. So all that has to be taken into account, and the fact that we are a public school and we are educating all children, not just my children, my grandchildren. So while I too share concerns of certain materials, and I stepped up and pressed to get rid of some of it, and we did, we have policies put in place that were fashioned by the state to keep us in accordance with federal law and with Supreme Court precedents. All right, so we tweaked it a little bit on locally as we can, and that's what we have in place, and that's what we follow. So what we will do, we will continue to follow that, and some of this we found it was eye-opening because it was new to us on board as well. And how it gets there, that's a pretty convoluted story as we've come to find out when we researched it through the national companies that we use, or have to use. There's only so many available to use, and we use what's considered the best company for supplying our media centers. Well, it looks like I've rambled on long enough.
Yes, Fort Mill School District had some contraband books in our libraries. It was at the high school level, it wasn't at the elementary level, it wasn't at the middle school level. When we were made aware of it, we immediately employed policy. That's why you have policy that comes from our state association that we model. We send it to legal. We send legal the questions and concerns, including what was presented. How did it get in our schools? As Wayne alluded to, it happens. It is no different than your neighbor walking their dog and allowing their dog to relieve themselves on your lawn and not picking it up. It happens. So companies have genres. They have all of this in our libraries. We have biographies, we have autobiographies, we have fiction, we have nonfiction, and In that classification, the National Libraries Association classifies different books and goes through what they're putting into those categories. When there's a collection of books by an author that happens to be a Newbery, a Calicut, whatever the case in the national arena for awards is considered, that can get into our libraries. It was found, it was removed, and policy was followed. There's nothing else that we can do. We are public education. While I don't like it and don't agree or practice, it's still public education.
So, the books that we were talking about, they're not just the run-of-the-mill books. We're talking genderqueer and a couple other ones, books that would have given Hugh Hefner maybe a little blushing. They weren't exactly the books that you would or should ever find in our schools. And yes, the board did eventually remove the books, but the parents had to really go through probably a process that should have been downsized. It should have made it easier. We've had parents that had to sit in front of 5 other educators to talk about removing a book. There's nothing wrong with making the process hard, but to make it difficult is a different thing. And as a board, we can do policies, and we should really improve our policies when it comes to situations that we know that are difficult. And there are plenty of resources out there that we can use. It just takes time and effort to research, to use for our libraries and our other resources. They're on our kids' laptops and our technology. And those books that may have been found in our high schools were available on our laptops and other forms of technology that was accessible. And until it was mentioned and brought up, they did eventually put these books behind an age appropriate. So we do need to improve our policies, but more than anything, we need to make it easier for us parents who are fighting for our children to easily talk to our educators and get these things out of our libraries.
So, you know, it comes back again to policy and accountability, and I'm relieved to hear that materials were removed eventually, and I'm relieved to hear that they weren't at the elementary level. But, you know, these are children that we're talking about, and they're at school to learn, and the point of school and the reason for being there is education. They go out into the world with skills that they need to be successful, every single one of them, and we don't want any distractions taking away from that mission to educate the children. We don't want those distractions for the teachers, and we don't want those distractions for the students. This district is growing at a rapid pace, and we need to adapt and keep the school performing into the future. And, you know, I hear people talking about how we're in the top 5%, and that's great, and it is. I mean, that's the reason I'm here. The schools are performing at a high level, but they're growing and they're changing. And I hear things like, well, we're already at such a high level, to go to the next level would be really, really difficult. And, oh, it's hard to have accountability because, you know, we're bound by state policies and federal policies. I recognize the challenges, but we have to try. If we just let our school district follow the policies that are set by federal standards, we'll be dragged down to the level of all those other schools. And instead of getting from the top 5% to the top 1%, we're going to have to down to the bottom. It's going to be a race to the bottom, and that's not what we want.
I'm going to read this first line of the question again. Parents found examples of culturally responsive teaching, pornographic literature, stop. Porn in our schools. Parents found. There's a slogan going around right now that says elect a parent. Okay? Because parents found it. We have a parent in this room who brought this to our board, and they were told, well, there's nothing they can really do about it. No, that is absolutely when you fight. Yes. I have 4 children, and 3 of them are in this school district. I want to cuss so bad when I hear about this stuff, because this is what we're fighting for. This is not about, well, there's a standard practice, there's a standard procedure. No, it's freaking porn in our schools, and it has no place at all. And you better believe there will be a zero tolerance if it is found. Y'all, we have it right now. It might not be in picture, it might not be with pictures, but I can't even. If you were reading this to children at a playground, you would get arrested. Yes. Listen, no, everybody's not the same. Everybody doesn't have my beliefs. But we all are ingrained with something in our heart that knows what is right and knows what is wrong, and I will fight for it.
Me and you on the battlefield. Exactly. So, okay, so I'm not a politician, so I'm just going to get right to it. We're going to talk about it for my minute, right? The amendments to Title IX are coming down. And as a school board candidate, I have researched these amendments, I have studied to show myself approved, and I thoroughly understand what's coming. And if these things go into place, the federal government has written into those amendments that school board officials are going to have to write policies to bring the school district into compliance so that our federal funding isn't in jeopardy. So as a school board, we're going to have to be strategic and think critically and write policies that will protect our children and will keep pornography out of our schools. It all boils down to, we have to have individuals who have a certain skill set. Listen, there's more than enough blame to go around, but what I'm not going to do is sit here and browbeat board members because that book made it in. At the end of the day, we are better when there are differences on the board. We don't have a diversity, and I'm learning that diversity is a bad word, so work with me. We don't have diverse professions on the board. So you have individuals on the board that everyone has, their strength is finance. Everyone, their strength is marketing. Then we need human services because our children are human. The parents of this district are human. Amen. We need to diversify our board so that we will be strong and our kids will get what they need.
No, that's Marxism.
There you go. Okay, the culturally responsive teaching is coming through the staff and the district level classes. For example, Fort Mill held a forum on culturally relevant curriculum, and discussions included recommendation for becoming a culturally competent educator, as well as evaluating content with culturally responsive lens. Now, we can't stop them from teaching, but we certainly can stop them from what we put in our district and the vendors. We can stop them from training through funds that they had. So the Follett, the education, this is an expired document that we are still working with. We can have vendors who are more suitable to our needs. So as far as the literature, we have an approved process that went through in August of 2022. This actually made it more complicated for us to remove books. So basically worked with the ALA, the American Library Association, who actually band together to kind of train against people, parents, who bring books to their attention. So they have this whole culture going on where us parents are just trying to get the porn out of the school libraries. Sexually explicit material does not belong in our classroom and is unlawful without parental consent. And I stop that there. Thank you.
So I'll start off by saying, the parents were the ones who notified. The parents were not ignored in this case. This was a good opportunity for the parents to show that they're very involved in their child's lives, and the students' lives. What more can you do? You have to listen to the parent, but you also have to put procedures in place so we're more proactive so this doesn't happen in the beginning. You have to put protocols in place to review it. My whole slogan is Together We Excel. Why not put a forum together where you have parents, teachers, students reviewing books so you have more perspective, but once you bring those perspectives together, because someone's going to say this is pornography, someone else says no, this is not, we come to an agreement and we say no, this is not going to enter, no, this is not going to enter, and that's how you accomplish things. You come together, you have more than just one voice saying this book can go into the library or this can be taught. You have a group. You have more than one voice. You have parents involved. You have students involved. Because students can tell you some things that a lot of us never knew, I was talking with my daughter about, no, this is pornography. She was like, no, this is the Renaissance. I'm like, come on now, this is pornography. So those are the type of conversations we need to really have and sit down and get together, because we need to come to a solution that's going to benefit our kids, because our kids are the future. They're our future leaders, and we have to protect their minds. We can't have young kids looking at pornography, because that leads them down the wrong road. And we don't want our kids going down the wrong road. We want them to have the educational success that we seek for them having. We want them to have a future that's filled with God's grace. Thank you.
Of course, I don't want pornography in our schools. Of course, I fought to keep the pornography and these types of things out of our schools. I'm a Christian mother with 5 children. I understand how impressionable they can be. With 4 sons, I understand that there's visual things that's difficult for them. And this was tough for me to ingest, that this is happening in the Fort Mill schools. Because we moved our family here to put our children in the Fort Mill schools. The Department of Education has set forth curriculum standards for South Carolina students to be college and career ready. That curriculum is driven by state legislators, and our teachers, their job is to make sure that they focus their time on those standards and this curriculum so that the children have a rich understanding of those concepts. So that after graduation, whether they go into the military, into career ready, or into additional education, they're ready for that. But teachers are human beings. They're not perfect, and they're not robots. And when a problem arises, we do have the best way to handle that issue is to handle it on a building level and with that administration. If the parents are not comfortable with how that was handled, or if it's a habitual thing, then we have a grievance policy that we have in place, and they can elevate it to the district level. Look, we hear about some crazy things going on in other districts, and I think that overwhelms us here. Those things aren't happening here in Fort Mill anymore. We just have a few mild cases that were brought to us, and with the board, since I've been on the board in these last few years, we handled it swiftly. We handled it quickly. We handled it according to the laws. Thank you.
Today I went to a business to request their permission to put a campaign sign in front where it was a high traffic area, and the person I spoke with said, "Oh my gosh, no one's ever asked. They just do it." And I said, "Well, it's the rules. You're supposed to ask and have permission. Like, I'm following the rules." think with all of this, we have rules and policy and procedure in place. And if we follow the rules, there's an appeal process if you're unhappy with the verdict. But I think all rules are there so that they can be followed. Now, both of my boys are in the military, and they love to throw acronyms at me and talk to each other in like secret code. And are you going to TDY? Are you going to ESP? Are you going to ESPN, ABC, NBC? And I half the time look at my husband and go, what are they talking about? And I think that that's happened with culturally responsive teaching. CRT in education means culturally responsive teaching. It means that you teach in a way that honors the different cultures that are in the room. It means that when I was in 3rd grade and I said, I'm half Indian and multiracial, people will know better than to say, what tribe? In law school, CRT means something very different, and it helps a lawyer know how to understand why a crime was committed. But the reason you need a teacher on the board is because we know what our letters mean in education.
You don't.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the 4th question. Candidates, if you can just hold that microphone closer to you so everyone in the back part of the room can hear clearly, that would be fantastic. So question number 4, Lippy, we'll start with you and again work our way down. Question number 4, safety and security of our students, teachers, and staff at our facilities, including bathrooms and locker rooms, is certainly a priority for our community this school year. What are possible solutions our school district should consider to ensure the safety of all people at school?
Okay, so on Tuesday night at the board meeting, Mr. Todd gave a comprehensive look at the safety and security of our schools. He is as cute as a button if you've never seen him. He is passionate about what he does. He has amazing amounts of experience, and his entire presentation is available online, and I encourage you to watch it. It's a lot of PowerPoint slides, but I did learn a ton. One thing I know is that he is working hard to streamline our security. All the schools that have the same layout are going to have the same security system. It's going to be great. I also know that he has done my favorite part, built partnerships with the law enforcement agencies, and has newly installed 911 communications that go direct, I'm sorry about that, that go direct between our county, our towns, our city of TKK, and our schools, and we can communicate with each other now. So he's doing all the best things for our school district. I do believe that the first step to student safety begins at home. I think families should be having an open dialogue about what looks safe and what looks sketchy, and encouraging teachers, students to use their adult support systems, the tip line, to report those things when it seems weird or out of line and let it be looked at. I also believe that the overall use of social media contributes negatively. People hide behind keyboards and create cruel situations that cause people to take desperate measures. So I think what needs to happen is we as the adults have to take the responsibility to model vigilance and kindness to each other.
When I ran for election in 2018, I kept my promise to this community. I promised that I was going to focus on safety and security within our district. Under my leadership, we have more than doubled our safety and security budget to $962,000, which is a 126% increase. This almost $1 million budget does not include the $500,000 grant that Mr. Todd received. Mr. Todd is our dedicated, decorated expert for our safety and security plans. Please refer, like Ms. Pratt said, to our October 4th board meeting. It will blow you away. Every school in our district has at least one armed, uniformed officer. In addition, we have reconfigured the schools to stop access to people to our buildings from people who are not teachers, children, or volunteers. We have two-way radios, like she said, that communicate directly, immediately, and instantaneously with area law enforcement, with the building level administrators, and as well as the district office. Prevention is often overlooked and a key factor in reducing school-level threats. For that reason, I voted to more than double the number of school psychologists in the district. I voted to triple the number of behavioral interventionists, and I voted to quadruple the number of mental health counselors added and behavioral technicians, which was a $2 million addition in positions. All these professionals have at least a master's plus 30 or a doctorate degree. Thank you.
So safety and security insurance, they're near and dear to my heart. I've worked with school districts in the past. I've worked with multiple colleges here in South Carolina. I'll tell you the key to safety, the key to insurance, the key to security is being proactive. If you see trends that are occurring somewhere else, eventually they're going to occur here, especially with Fort Mill growing so rapidly. You can't wait till they happen. It's not a matter of if they're going to happen. It's going to matter of when they're going to happen. So you have to prepare. You have to put a strategic plan in place, a policy in place, that you have protocols, that you're transparent with the community. If something happens, then you know there's a communication that's going to go out to the parent. I don't want my daughter coming in on a Wednesday night or a Tuesday night, scared to go to school the next day because someone wrote on the school board or wrote on the bathroom wall. I want them to have some reassurance that we have safe schools to go to every day. And you do that by having procedures in place before that occurs, not after it occurs. You know when trends are happening. If something is happening in California last week, it's going to eventually come here and eventually land in Fort Mill. May not be this year, may not be next year, but eventually it's going to happen. So you build your policies now, so you're proactive with your approach. You don't wait to after the fact. You tackle it now, and that's how you keep our kids safe. You keep our teachers safe, so they're able to come home. My whole thing when I talk to schools, I was like, my job is to ensure that your professors go home. My job is to ensure that your students go home safe. And really, that's my whole focus, ensuring our safe schools and safe places for our kids.
Okay, this seems to go back to policy once again. We all know that security should be held at the highest of standards. Now, when I read this question, I feel like I took it a little differently. So I'd like to give you an example, and I'd like to reference an event that happened in Loudoun County, Virginia, where a student was sexually assaulted by a predator wearing a skirt. No, we cannot let this happen. We cannot be a statistic here in Fort Mill. The school board tried to silence that family, and the predator attacked again. So could you imagine being the parent of that victim? I don't know what I would do. They're now suing the school district. I think we don't need to be a statistic here in Fort Mill. We need to make policy happen now. Regardless of this election and who wins, a policy needs to be set in place for the safety of women and children in our district. So, Fort Mill being number one, let's keep it that way. Let's do this before we face any damage and become like they did. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to echo what has already been said. We need policies. We need proactive policies. We need proactive, enforceable policies. But the policies that need to be developed need to mirror the values of this community. Going back to what another individual was saying about the curriculums in school, in the classrooms, and, how they're teaching this or that. A lot goes on in the classrooms. I would just like to see the classrooms go back to English, math, and science. We have some of the highest paid teachers in the state. And I don't know about any of you, but I've never had a job where I could just come to work and do what I wanted to do. You can't do it. Teachers are hired to teach the curriculum. Everything else needs to stay outside of the classroom. Policies need to be created. They need to be enforced. But most importantly, the policies that are governing the administrators within our school need to mirror the values of the number one stakeholders in our community, and that is the parents. Parents are the number one stakeholder. If you look up the definition of what a stakeholder is, a stakeholder is a group of individuals or an individual or a business that things directly affect. What goes on in the schools and how our children are taught directly affects our households. Thank you.
The word that instantly sometimes it's just good to take a pause. Just instantly dropped in my heart was the word paramount. Taxes, millage, curriculum. This is being taught, this isn't being taught. It's perspective. I have 4 kids, and all of them will go or are in Fort Mill schools. Guess what doesn't matter if they don't come home? All of those other things. School safety is paramount. It's not even listed in the question. Actually, I find that to be kind of interesting. We're talking about bathrooms and locker rooms, but I think the reality that every single parent in this room or grandparent in this room has to face every single Monday through Friday is getting a phone call or seeing something on Facebook. It is policy, but it has to be paramount. Everything comes second. Everything comes second to our children coming home every single day. I want to give respect to the current board. If y'all haven't checked it out, there's a new article, policies being put in place. I'll give credit absolutely where it needs to go. And so I want you to thank them if you see them this evening. I want you to thank them because the policy does look really solid. And so I'm excited about where this is going.
Amen. I don't think there's much more I could say about safety that hasn't already been said. It absolutely is the number one most important thing. If you don't have that, you don't have anything. So that's the highest priority, of course. And in that sense, we have to defer to our law enforcement partners and our security experts and be proactive. Absolutely have to be proactive, not reactive, and put procedures and policies in place to protect the safety of the children, the teachers, and the staff, and everyone at the schools. Absolutely critical and essential. So it's constantly evolving, constantly changing, and you have to be very vigilant and constantly evaluate your procedures and change your procedures and put protections in place. So absolutely essential.
God gave me 2 miracles. My little 13-year-old boy and my 10-year-old daughter. And just like every parent here, I worry about them. No different, but my daughters who I worry about the most lately, because the way the world has changed drastically. Us women, we've been fighting for centuries for our rights, and we were finally winning. Well, we are slowly losing again. So the bathrooms and locker rooms are definitely a concern for me. Now, the locker rooms and bathrooms have definitely been a haven for other activities that boys and unfortunately a lot of bullies have been using those as nice little private rooms. But we also know that in our schools that we have drugs that are in our schools, and we bullies also. And we've been working for decades, and those problems are still with us. We really need to maybe change what we're doing, because maybe it's not working. They've taken parents away from the schools. You don't see as many parents running the halls. We used to be part of our school system. We were an integral part of it. Now we're behind a glass wall. They call us when they need us. But if parents were allowed to be back in the hallways, like dad on duties and a couple other things, you'll see some changes. Parents are the cure to a lot of our problems, and we need to create policies to allow us back in. Now, we do have a great system now that the board has put together, but we are becoming more reactive and not proactive, and we really need to be more proactive community. Thank you.
So there's a lot of things that are in place in Fort Mill School District when it comes to safety and security of all children. And there's 18,200 children in our school district. I take their safety and security very serious. I always have. I've also said straight from the beginning, I would never write the roadmap and tell you everything that we do, because I don't know if you're safe or not safe. If someone else is going to see it or hear it, I'm not going to write the roadmap and tell you how to get into our schools, what our breaches are, or the rest of that. Mr. Todd does an amazing job in Fort Mill School District checking our buildings, putting plans together, working with all of the enforcement agencies. The most recent event that we had all flavors of alphabet soup involved. When Mr. Todd and Alphabet Soup say that there is not a credible threat, they've done a lot of things on the background that you're not seeing, and if you're on social media, all you're seeing is hysteria because it's not what's going on. We have put policies and programs in place. Mr. Todd does a great job. When it comes to safety and security for locker rooms or bathrooms, yes, things do happen. Things have always happened. Back to when I was in school a million years ago. We don't want video cameras in our bathrooms, because that would be the next thing that we would have hysteria about, is that we have cameras watching our child go to the bathroom. We have strategic things in place, and we do every day, every week, every year, monitor and adjust our programs and our safety measures as needed.
Again, being last, it's, you might guess, everything that I had prepared has been mentioned, particularly Ms. McCarter and Ms. Brandon have mentioned a lot of it. And to Mr. Helm's point, I agree wholeheartedly. Safety, getting our children home. If you don't think my two grandchildren aren't everything to me, you're sadly mistaken. And it's not just them. We've got teachers, we've got staff in buildings. I've got a daughter that teaches, I've got a daughter-in-law that teaches in our district. Their safety as well is very, very important to me. So rest assured that we are trying to do all that we can practically do in terms of hardware, systems, and protocols to manage the system. And I mentioned earlier how relationships are very important to me, and that's one thing that I particularly commend Mr. Todd for, having built relationships with our local law enforcement and our emergency management services, so that he can call them. They know him. They trust him. He talks the same language. That's very important. Another thing we do in our schools, and this is like ground level zero, I would say, is our elementary schools. We have no place for hate in several of our schools. Anyway, we have different anti-bullying programs. I went to one today where they brought in the Optimus truck, Optimus Prime truck. It's a Transformer truck. I have no clue. Well, I didn't know before this either. I knew what Transformers were, but anyway, they brought that in and had a program. They travel around the U.S. and go to schools and different places where they get in front of kids and talked about anti-bullying, and it was great what I was hearing. The kids were really engaged, and I think that's what's most important.
Thank you very much. All right, so candidates, we'll begin with the last question, the fifth question. And again, I'm going to unseal it.
And we'll start in the middle?
We'll start. Well, if we had an odd number, it probably would work. But Wayne, we'll start with you and work our way down. All right, so the question is kind of long. I'll read it twice, okay? All right, question number 5. Again, Wayne, we'll start with you. The school district is carrying about $600 million in debt from construction, and the $50 million in impact fees were not used to pay for new construction as expected. Most recently, it was stated that the agreement between the Fort Mill School District and York County will be amended. Assuming that the amended capital improvement plan is approved, as a board member, how will the board of trustees ensure that those impact fees go to pay only for the 2 elementary schools and 1 middle school and the expansion of a high school? So I'll read that question one more time. The school district is carrying about $600 million in debt from construction, and the $50 million in impact fees were not used to pay for new construction as expected. Most recently, it was stated that the agreement between the Fort Mill School District and York County will be amended. Assuming that the amended capital improvement plan is approved, as a board member, how will the Board of Trustees ensure those impact fees go to pay only for the 2 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and new expansion of a high school?
The simple answer is that it will not. It cannot. The way the law is written, the county, their experts interpret it differently than the school district interprets it. And basically you had to use the money to pay for expenses as incurred. That does not mean paying back your mortgage, the bond. You've got to pay the contractor. Well, that's long since happened. Our schools were built before these funds were collected. And the intent all along was to use it for to pay back the bond, make the bond payments. So the agreement that is being hashed out now, that we plan on, will allow us to will allow us to amend the plan for our next, to add additional schools that are next in our 10-year plan that we're going to be needing. And we'll be able to use that money to pay for that up front. And that will then reduce the amount of total additional debt that we may need to consider incurring. But we haven't got to that point yet. But we know the growth is coming. You know, we're going to have more facilities.
Thank you.
We carry a high amount of debt. That's no secret in Fort Mill School District. We grow every year by almost 1,000 students, which means we grow by a new school almost every year. So the impact fees were put in place about 4-ish years ago to help growth pay for growth. And that means new schools. And the original intent was for the impact fee money to help make the mortgage payments, as Mr. Bolden alluded to. Going forward, the impact fee money, with the way this is being amended and being discussed to be amended, instead of taking a mortgage to build the next $50 million elementary school, we'll pay cash for the elementary school. That's been the discussion that we have started having. We know that there are, as you said in the question, 2 elementary schools, a middle school, additions to high school that will be needed to take place. And rather than coming to the public and asking for all of that in a referendum, we'll pay cash for as much as we can pay cash for, and then ask the public to approve taxing themselves in a bond referendum for what is needed to continue to take care of the growth in our community as the impact money continues to be collected.
Okay, so when I read the original impact fee contract, it actually stated that the funds were to be used for the building and the construction, never stated that it should have been used for anything other than that. And if I get on the board, I will make sure we actually follow the contract and agreement, and if we are in question or there was a doubt, we'll make sure that we have constant communication, because our partners, which is the actual county, we shouldn't assume what we believe what the contract said, because we all know what happens when you assume, which unfortunately causes a litigation and probably thousands, and we don't know exactly, maybe even 100,000 of legal fees. So we'll make sure we read the contract and then ask questions and to verify, because we don't want to assume what the contract says. We want to make sure. And that those funds would only be used for the new schools. If we have anything that we will need to pay extra, of course we'll have to do a bond referendum, but we'll follow that contract, and if we are in doubt, I will assure you that we will ask questions, and then we'll ask questions again, and we'll ask more questions. We're close neighbors. We can easily meet at the toastery and talk about what we thought it was about. No guessing. Thank you.
Well, I certainly agree with, understanding the contract in detail and making sure that we take advantage of every aspect that we can to spend the money responsibly and fund the schools in the way that we all agreed to. The community is growing and we have to fund the schools. And just the key for me is good stewardship of the taxpayers' money, right? It's not our money, it's taxpayers' money. And we're responsible for how we spend that money, and we have to make sure that we're prioritizing the expansion that we need to prioritize, and educational goals, and not spending money that we don't need to be spending.
There's a lot going on with this impact fee stuff. It's in the weeds right now. Okay, I don't know about you, but if I have I can frame it like this. If you have a contract with someone that ends up having to be decided by a judge, I don't think that everyone really had a clear understanding in the beginning. Something was miscommunicated. And so all I can tell you is that if you do elect me, fiscal responsibility is absolutely at the top of my list. It has to happen. And in the, just look from a holistic perspective in our economy. Okay, when it comes to taxes, to millage right now, we are technically in, by definition, a recession. So, I will make this statement to you tonight that I promise that during a recession, and when we are in the economic status that we are in as a whole, now is not the time to raise taxes. So until we see that turnaround, you will not see Joe Helms raising his hand for a millage increase. It is damaging our small businesses, which make up so much of our resources. We have got to stand and recognize that a body of the school board works in relationships with other bodies, the community, and you've got to be able to bridge that gap. So thank you so much. God bless. Y'all have been amazing.
And again, it is unfair that I have to follow up that type of energy. So, I'm the boring candidate, right? And thank you. I believe the question was specifically as school board trustee member what I would do to ensure that the impact fees are only used for the two elementary schools, the one middle school, and the one high school. But I think I understand that there was a contract, and that contract is being amended. Yeah, we can't just do what we want to do. We have to follow the law. Right? So the first thing I would do is I would make it my business to make sure that I clearly understand the contract. I'm a small business owner, so I'm all about the leisure. I'm all about the small print. I am going to read it in its entirety, and I'm going to ask the appropriate questions at the appropriate time, and I'm going to follow the law. So I can, in good conscience, without ever reading the contract, say, oh yeah, I'll make sure that it's only used for this, that, and this. In good conscience, that may be what you want to hear, but I can't tell you that because I haven't read the amendment. So what I can tell you is, as a school board trustee member, I would like to think that if I had read the original contract, I would have asked, can this be amended? It's all about asking the right questions at the appropriate time in order to be responsible.
Okay, the impact fees, as Joe said, there's a lot of weeds in it, and it's really disheartening to say the least. We had a contract that was not followed. It doesn't take a lawyer, it doesn't take a finance major to understand something went wrong here. These funds were put in an interest-bearing account that the taxpayers didn't get. So I find that concerning. So problems like this, on this magnitude, puts taxpayers at risk of raising taxes. And we cannot do that. We simply cannot. So again, it's all about the contract. It was clear in the beginning. It was amended because it was not followed. So that's the simple answer. Thank you.
So, thank you. First of all, I'll say, I'm from Rock Hill, so to see the schools in Fort Mill, I remember living in Rock Hill, the schools in Fort Mill. We have some very, very nice schools. But with that being said, and I've had this conversation before, anytime you go to court for anything, then there's a sense of transparency that was not shared initially. And that's where you build that, you kind of come apart and you say, what are you doing with this $50 million? Is it intended for Catawba Ridge, or now is it intended for new elementary schools that are going to be built? You work with the board now going forward to put plans in place, and you work out a budget that's going to benefit the schools that's planning on being built, but not hurt the taxpayers also. So I like that Fort Mill continues to grow, but we have to grow financially sound. We have to come together as a board. I can't say Eric Mann can do something himself. We have to come together as a board to build a budget that's going to represent the board, that's going to represent the community, and we're going to build schools financially sound and not hurt the taxpayer, and at least involve the taxpayer and be transparent with the taxpayer also. I think transparency is key to any budget management. That's my whole spiel. Thank you.
Seek first to understand. In July of 2018, the York County Council agreed to three things. They agreed to the dollar amount of our impact fees. They agreed to be the collecting agency of that money. And they agreed to the way we planned to spend it. So I'm going to repeat that. The county council voted and agreed to our plan, the way we spent it, the way we wanted to spend it. Then the lawsuits began from the builders who did not want to give up their money. They didn't like impact fees. So we waited, and we won, and we beat them every single time, all the way to the South Carolina Supreme Court, because the Fort Mill School District was right. Then the county, now that we were ready to have our money, we asked the county for our money, and the county expressed their concern over the way they agreed that we would be spending the money. So that's where this impasse is. So while we were working on these lawsuits and defending what we knew was right, and while we were working with our county council members, we voted to follow our CFO and, for lack of a better term, refinance these bonds, which saved our taxpayers millions of dollars in that process. We've reduced debts by 46 mils and a 39% decrease. Over this period, we have built relationships with our county council members, and with that relationship, we are working out the process to give them confidence to trust us with how we're going to spend this money. Thank you.
Hopefully you remember the part where I told you that I've been part of Fort Mill Schools forever. And I have been around when we turned down a bond referendum and the teachers had their hearts broken because it meant that we were going to fill our classrooms with 28 plus little children because there was nowhere else to put them. And we had portables right in front of the car line. Then the next bond referendum did pass, and it was awesome, except there wasn't any money for teachers in that building. So we had a brand spanking new, beautiful building that sat empty. And the way the law's written is tricky. I agree. I think that's why I'm glad that Ms. Lordo has to read all the fine print and then explain it to the board members and the community. But if I bought a great new house, I would still have to find some money, even if I mortgaged it. I'd have to find some money to put the furniture inside it. And you still have to find money for the teachers that are going to teach in your brand spanking new building. Now, one thing I love about Fort Mill, and I'm so proud of, is every time we build new schools, we make sure our existing schools have equipment and technology that is at the same level. There is no have and have not with our schools. If Catawba Ridge got something brand spanking new, the other two high schools got it as well. That happened all the way down, and it's something to be proud of, even if it means we have to raise taxes. It keeps our teachers happy.
All right. Well, thank you very much, candidates. We certainly appreciate it. Those in the audience, thank you so much for coming out tonight and being respectful of these candidates. Once again, don't forget that Election Day is on Tuesday, November the 8th. Early in-person voting will begin on October the 24th. If you're not sure about registering, if you're ready to sign up, the deadline is tomorrow, Friday, October the 7th by 5 p.m. Check out scvotes.gov to learn more. Real quick, I want to thank the event sponsors for tonight, Moms for Liberty of York County, the Oak Initiative, Republican Women Rising, Freedom Pommy Theater, Dennis Getter, Selby's Chiropractic Health and Performance, and Fierce Mom Workshop. Don't forget to scan that QR code if you can. You'll get access to all the candidates' bios. They're also on social media, and many of them will be hanging around tonight. Thank you so much for being engaged in our community. Candidates, thank you so much for your time as well.